Hey folks, welcome back to Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Burrell, and I'm sure many of you who have been watching the channel for any length of time already understand a portion of what I try to do is to advocate, educate, and motivate fellow transplant patients. And I want to emphasize that part of being an advocate today because I saw something the other day that really upset me, not because I saw it the other day, but because I've seen it over and over and over and over again the last couple of years. Many of you may be like I am. At some point pre or post-transplant, you had to go on and get on Social Security disability, at least for a time, to not only get the income assistance, but also potentially to get the Medicare insurance that comes along with that. Now, for me, pre-transplant, that was actually something my doctors had pushed me toward for quite a number of years. They could see that I was really struggling, not able to work, really not able to do my job. And it finally got to the point where I just couldn't do anymore. I just could not go any farther. My heart failure had gotten to a place, stage 4 and worse, that I just could not function. And so they went ahead and recommended that I apply for Social Security disability. They wrote all the paperwork up, got everything ready for me. I sent it in, and I was actually approved for that very quickly, albeit it did take a while for the income or the payments themselves to start. Now, after that, eventually, I made it to the Medicare insurance, which has been a tremendous help for me and my family, because back when I'm talking about, this is pre-Obamacare, and so basically, if you had a pre-existing condition, you were out. You could not have insurance unless you were under an employer, which obviously I couldn't be. So that's at least where I was back then. Now, since that time, one of the most aggravating things I've had to deal with over time is the constant need to go into the Social Security office from time to time to make adjustments, to report, incomes, to add dependents like I have since we've adopted 3 children since that. Just a lot of little tweaks and changes that have had to be made in the Social Security office in person, and I've always been very upset about having to do that because when I go in, after I make an appointment, typically I would even still get to the Social Security office, it'd be full from can to can't. You would be taking a number, which had nothing to do with your appointment, just a random number, and I would wait 2, 3, 4, 5 hours even to try to get back to see someone who typically, what they would often do, I usually did better than this, but I would hear it in the windows next to me. They would often just look for an excuse to say, well, you didn't bring in this document or that document, or you didn't fill this out right. You're going to leave and go home and do it again. And I used to get so aggravated at people that I knew I could tell were struggling. People who had been sitting there in wheelchairs and had to have assistance with them, or even one guy I saw one day had to have an actual nurse come in with him and sit with him, and then still was denied from getting the changes made that he did because of a formality, if you will. But anyway, that's neither here nor there for this real discussion. This comes into something that has happened kind of during the COVID time and now even post-COVID, and that is many of the local Social Security offices, like ours that is most close by, has basically been closed. Okay, for a long time they were closed altogether, no appointments, no way you could talk to anyone in person, which I can only imagine how difficult that would be if you had a problem. Maybe there was an issue with your check or the issuance of it. Maybe there was an adjustment need to be made. You just simply couldn't do it. But even since then, and it's been about a year or so ago, they finally opened these offices back up to, quote, take appointments. And I noticed that it seems when I drive by that those appointments must be very few and far between. I say that because it doesn't matter when I drive by during the day. There seems to be large sections of time where there's basically absolutely nobody there, even though they've got a sign on the outside that says make an appointment. It seems like they purposely made no appointments for whole blocks of time during the day. And then there'll be surges of time, I've noticed, where basically the parking lot's full, but worse than that, now there are a ton of people standing on the outside of the building. They're not allowed to go in because of COVID restrictions, even though we're past COVID by a long shot. They're not able at all to go in, and so they're left standing on the outside. And that became even more aggravating the other day when I drove by the local Social Security office. Thankfully, I didn't have to go there. I just happened to come by the street. And I see the same thing happen again. Once again, it had been empty that morning when I came by. No one there, even though they were open. And then I come back by the building a few hours later, and here we've got a crowd of people beginning to assemble, which I assume apparently have appointments. And again, they've been locked outside the door, unable to go in. I guess waiting on their number to be called, or waiting on the text, or maybe the buzzer like at the restaurant. I don't know how they're doing it now, but they're on the outside. The thing about it is, on this particular day, it was 93 degrees outside that building. I know because I checked my Apple Watch and the dash on my car as I came by. Both matched pretty good. 93 degrees outside. Humidity level was high. I think the heat index that day was about 104. In addition to that, they're standing on a blazing hot concrete asphalt parking lot. And again, I was upset to see it, but not as upset as I would be when I left. Came back almost an hour later and saw the same people, particularly, and I'll show you some of the photos in a moment. I saw some of the same people wearing the same clothes, obviously the same people, standing outside that security office where they've been standing out in that heat again now for an hour or who knows when. I don't know when they first got there, but had been standing there for an extremely long period of time. Very high heat index, to the extent that I went down the road, ran one more errand, and came back and saw this picture right here, which is again of some of the same people. However, if you'll notice the man here to the side, I don't know if he's having a heat emergency or what, but he's already fallen toward his knees, and now there's people coming up, touching him on the back and trying to comfort him during this heat. And that's just terrible to think about. You don't know what these people are there for, what their conditions are, what their underlying medical conditions might be, but they're being basically forced to stand outside in the heat to wait on an appointment, which who knows if it'll ever actually come. It's just terrible. Why are they sectioning off huge blocks of time where there's no one there, then bunching people up during certain parts of the day, bunching those people up, and then making them stand outside, okay? I maybe sit in your car, maybe, and I guess you could sit in your car, but if it's kind of first come, first served, they open that door, you better be ready to run in. But how is this system working? It's just really, I'm very aggravated, really aggravating to me. And then I turn around and I go around the block because I'm curious. I just want to see what's going on. And I noticed this scene from the back of the building. Now, this is employee parking back here. There's like 4 or 5 cars. This parking lot used to be full. There used to be a ton of people who worked in this office, who worked in this building, who serviced this people. Now there's 4 or 5. So basically there's no help on the backside. People left struggling on the outside and in the heat, waiting on their appointments. We don't know what'll come. I just don't understand this. Somehow this is absolutely wrong. We need to have a place where we can go in, sit down, get our issues dealt with in a healthy manner without causing some sort of a medical emergency or heat emergency like this guy based on having been there so long. So I'm just really fed up with this, and there's nothing much I know to do, albeit I'm going to make some phone calls and see. I don't know what I can do personally, but I do know this. I want to hear from your experience. If you're a person who has to regularly go down to the Social Security Disability Office, whether you're a transplant patient or not, what are your experiences like? Are they long wait lines? Are they long wait times? Is it hard to get an appointment? And then when you do, what's your experience like? Are you getting service like you need, or is there a problem like I assume? And worse than that, are you much like this office right here where you're standing on the outside, having a heat stroke, waiting to go in? I think it's just terrible. And it's time we stand up. Something has to change. So go ahead and share with me your experience, and hopefully some of us can band together, make some phone calls, at least to our local offices, and see what in the world is going on, because it burns me up to see people being treated like this. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay stronger, friends.